Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is our Coffee with Impact, and so these are some of our editorial folks in the crowd. Not that you need an introduction, but we'll go ahead and read the bio anyhow. Ray Benson is the frontman and founder of the world-renowned Western swing band Asleep at the Wheel. He has overseen the release of more than 25 albums and countless tours and has won 9 Grammys. Benson's latest solo CD, A Little Piece, was released in January 2014. Ray's honors include 2011 Texan of the Year, 2011 Texas Medal of the Arts Award for Multimedia, Lifetime Achievement Award from the Americana Music Association, the TEC Les Paul Award, and in 2004, the official Texas State Musician Award. And that's only a few of the awards that you've earned. He's also an active advocate and board member for the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. Since 2010, Benson has hosted the highly successful Texas Music Scene television series, which broadcasts weekly in 250,000 homes across the top 16 cities in Texas and surrounding states. So without further ado, let's welcome Ray Benson this afternoon.
Thank you.
So again, thank you for sharing some of your afternoon with us, and we've got just a few questions that we want to send your way, and
Sure.
look forward to your insights. So for me, this is a real pleasure. I've actually had the opportunity of seeing you play at the Black Tie and Boots inaugural ball back in 2005, and then little things like ACL, and then most recently actually here just down the road in Round Rock at the Chalk Walk Festival. And so you certainly are all around and have been for a number of years. And so just tell us a little bit, with as storied a career as you've had, how do you continue to find inspiration and, the joy in all of the gigs, no matter, what size and where they are?
Well, I'm a musician, and show business is filled with entertainers, dancers, musicians, comedians, etc. But a musician plays music, and so I'm a guitarist and a singer, and so that's what keeps me going. Every day I try to get better. Every day I try to explore. I write, There's a great story that I quote often because it's so meaningful. The great writer T.S. Eliot was asked one day, he was at a party, and a young writer said, "Mr. Eliot, I've decided I've had it with writing. I'm going to quit writing because I can't put up with the business of it, with the motive." He says, "Yes, I'm just going to quit writing." And T.S. Eliot said, "You can?" And I think that is the the hallmark of what a musician should be, or any artist should be, is that we live in a world where creativity and expression is our currency, and so that's what we do. And the trick is to figure out how to do it for a living, and then how to do it to satisfy your creative muses.
Sure. So along those lines, do you have any single piece of advice or a few pearls of wisdom for people trying to make it in the entertainment industry here in Central Texas?
What I tell everybody, and this is the young people or old people, doesn't matter, it says, if you can do anything else, do it. But that's the deal, I have skills that I could do, but I couldn't be happy, And let me give you an example. Asleep at the Wheel has been my job for 46 years. In 1983, my first kid was born. My son was born, and I had recorded, I'm not sure how many, but maybe 5 albums. Had a top 10 record on the Billboard charts. Had won a Grammy, and in 1983 I made $20,000 that year, and my credit cards were maxed out. So, but I was, people in Austin and people in San Marcos were flipping land and making millions of dollars, and the town was percolating before the next bust. And so I really was conflicted. Am I going to be able to keep doing this, you know? And that was the thing, was that what am I going to do? I can't stop creating, I can't stop playing, I can't stop singing. Maybe I'll have to do this. So what I did was, I did everything. I took over the business management of the band. I drove the bus, you know, and said, okay, well, and I think that's the secret, is to be, you have to be able to do a lot of stuff if you're going to survive, you know. Mm-hmm. So I did voiceovers. I still do, you know. Budweiser, Applebee's, whatever, you know, doing their voice work because I was blessed with a recognizable voice, and then understanding that it was show business, you know. If you just want to be a pure artist, that's really wonderful. And if you can get away with it and you can figure out a way to do it, that's great. Otherwise, you're in show business. And if you can't take care of the business of show, then you do it. Now, I'm very blessed with a, you know, I don't call it schizophrenia, but with an ability to do two very dissimilar tasks. Although, you know, again, as I explain to people, I don't sit in the office and do flowcharts and spreadsheets. I have people do that, but I understand why they're A, necessary, and B, how it relates to what I do, which is play music.
Great. So you talk about the business of it. So how do you see the music playing a role in the economic boom here in Central Texas and just kind of, you know, throughout communities? We talk about this being, you know, the live music capital of the world, and so how do you see what you do playing into that bigger landscape?
Well, I think we're to blame for all the bad traffic. I mean, I remember watching a Dave Letterman show one night, and Sandra Bullock was on, and she had moved to Austin at the time, and he said, "So where do you live, Sandra?" He said, "I live in Austin, Texas." He says, "Well, I don't know anything about Austin, Texas, except Austin city limits," because he loved the show, you know. You know, I think that the reason that so many of these modern day technological and intellectual property firms moved to Austin, Texas was because of the cultural climate, you know. I often quote the superintendent of the Austin School District in 1920-something. I don't even know his name, but I remember reading this where he said, "Our currency is not in strong backs, but strong minds." And you can see that. We were, you know, I tell people this, I think this is one of the most earth-shattering things that ever happened. The invention of the silicon chip was on Research Boulevard by Texas Instrument. The integrated circuit was out in California, but this silicon chip was invented. This is like the wheel being invented here in the way it changed it. And so we never had a manufacturing base. When I first moved to town, there was nothing, you know. And all of a sudden, we obtained this manufacturing base. But as opposed to the steel industry or the automotive industry, this was the chip industry and the software industry and the personal computer industry, which was so different because it still demanded smart people as opposed to strong backs. So the music community and the film community and the literary community was always here in one form or the other, and I believe that attracts those kind of people. So the firms that, you know, and of course Michael Dell was a fluke. I mean, he just happened to go to school here and figure that thing out. I mean, right, I mean, he could have gone to SMU, he was from Dallas. I mean, I think he just wanted to get away from his mother is what I heard. Don't quote me on this. So, you know, this attracts people. I liken, you know, people ask me, I likened Austin, Texas in 1970, 71, 72, so the late 60s, as like Paris. A Texas version of Paris, where, you know, there were these incredible writers. I mean, think about Bill Broyles, Bud Shrake, Gary Cartwright, Texas Monthly writers. Bill Broyles, you know who he is. I mean, he wrote some of the biggest hit movies America's ever made. Bud Shrake, one of the greatest writers of all time, wrote the #1 selling sports book in history. Harvey Penick. I mean, this town had this wonderful. You can go back to Bedichek and all those guys. Billy Bramer. These were wonderful writers, filmmakers that are really lost to history. Eagle Purnell, and made these wonderful films. We were all just very young, and but this town had always had this underlying base of interesting people. It was purely Texas, but it just had a cosmopolitan and a worldly base because maybe the university, the Elizabeth Ney Museum, et cetera, et cetera. There was just wonderful creative people here, and that's what it was all about. GSD&M started, Roy and those folks, it was the same thing. How do we be creative and still stay in Austin and the surrounding area?
Sure. Make a business out of it.
Yep.
So with that, you talk about, years ago and people coming here, and obviously with the traffic, we know that there are a lot of people moving to town. But, you spoke to the fact that there is, this manufacturing and high tech. So as we've seen some iconic venues shut down in Austin and relocate and that sort of thing, what do you think the biggest challenges are that are facing the industry right now?
Which industry?
So music.
Oh, well, the affordability. Affordability of town, that's #1. And I don't know the answer to that because, musicians, artists, et cetera, are not a homogeneous bunch that they said, well, we'll build a village of low-cost housing. I went, yeah, well, that's wonderful, but that's really not the, we're first and foremost entrepreneurs, first and foremost. So it's always, and it's very difficult. Look, I've had over 100 people in my band, musicians, Our joke is, how do you a musician? Hire them. Say that about writers too,
Right.
Creative people are not so easy. There's no HR department in my little office, So it's the affordability of the thing and the accessibility to showcase. Now that we have pretty darn good. We got hundreds of clubs, but they're making a night what I was making in 1974. So. I don't know the answer, except there was a thing in the paper the other day in the Statesman about from Titian also saying, basically berating the public for not paying enough for the musicians. And I was going, it might be true, and it's a wonderful point, but that ain't going to solve the problem. This is a rough business of, starvation to stardom. I don't mean to, it would be like saying, well, we need to subsidize people at this level because, well, no, because everybody not everybody, but a lot of people would like to be a star, would like to be on stage, would like to make a ton of money and sing for a living or play guitar, but it ain't going to happen. It's the same as athletes, the entry level is easy, but the attainment level is very difficult. So I don't know the answer to the question. Now, on the other hand, I helped start the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians because they're saying, okay, here's something. Let's help the mental and physical health of our younger or even older struggling musicians, and who wouldn't live in a city which gives health care, dental care, mental health care at a very, very low cost to struggling musicians. So that's one of the things we've done. And as I said, if you had the choice of living in Dallas or Austin as a musician, that alone I mean, you know, how many people stay in a job they don't like because they get health care? You know, I mean, I understand that we're in a very flux position on health care, period, you know. So it's changing daily. But the point is this, is that we're trying to create things that are that. Second is to trying to create venues where they can play. You know, I got a little bar, I own 10% of a little bar downtown. But the reason that I got into it was so that I said, because we need a place for, you know, it holds 90 to 100 people. Without places like that, the future stars will never happen. So everything's about incubation, you know. Great, the tech companies got incubators, and they're, you know, and that's one of my beefs with the government is that you really do have to incubate this thing, or they'll move elsewhere. The housing thing is so critical right now. It used to be they could move to San Marcos. Now San Marcos is expensive. Caldwell County seems to be the only, you know, the affordable area for. But then how are you going to drive in? You know, it's a big drive. You know. The other, I mean, when I moved to Austin, I had a place on South 6th Street that I rented for $150 a month, and I could walk to the to the Armadillo or to the Split Rail, or, you know, I could walk to the places and actually conduct a little bit of business because there were other people who had the Soap Creek Saloon out there in Rolling Wood, and, you know. And that's just not the case anymore. It's spread out. We're very fortunate that gas is cheap right now, but we know it'll go up. So living, you know, in Round Rock, Taylor, Caldwell County, et cetera, you're gonna, and with traffic, you couldn't make the job trying to get from Round Rock to 6th Street, for instance. Take an hour and a half to get to the show if there was a wreck. So that's the problems. But again, creating an atmosphere, musicians will put up with a lot if there's, you know, a light at the end of the tunnel, even if they never get there. So, you know, the healthcare thing has been great. The obvious tons of places to play is great. The media attention that comes here is great. But it's certainly different. I mean, Austin City Limits was thought up in our, you know, our little house out on South 6th Street, me and Joe Gracie and a bunch of other people up at KLRN. And look what it turned into. But you don't get on it now if you're a local band.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you for that insight. So with all that, with the challenges, do you still consider Austin the live music capital of the world, and do you see that continuing?
I think it certainly is. Whether it continues or not is whether young people can come here and exist, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's also whether the city will do something about it in the surrounding areas, you know. I see, you know, and that's the other thing. It's pretty interesting how, okay, you live in Round Rock, you know, I don't know, but how many people actually come down to Austin to see music? I mean, that's a 2-hour trip sometimes, back and forth. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, it's I don't know. I never asked the audience where'd you come from, but I know that when we played in Round Rock, it was at the Chalk Walk. It was so well attended, so well received. I have to figure that it was folks who would love to come see us, but I don't blame them for not driving to South Austin.
Right. Well, excellent. You spoke a little bit about the Health Alliance. In 2015, you were recognized by Austin Gives for your philanthropy work, not only with the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians, the St. David's Foundation, the Wild Basin Wilderness Preserve, and Ballet Austin. So you obviously do give back quite a bit. Why do you think that's so important? Why do you take the time and energy to do that?
Why? Because they asked, you know, and I was honored that they would ask. You know, St. David's Foundation, last year we gave $52 million to the Austin community. The Health Alliance is over 2,000 musicians have gotten. We've saved lives and improved lives of people. I mean, why wouldn't you? I'm just very honored that they understand that I know Robert's Rules of Order. you know, it was, you know, that was the thing, was to, I was on the KLRU board for years, and one of the board members, a wonderful man, Alfred King of the King Ranch family, mm-hmm. He was on the board, and they bring me on, this is, 20 years ago or something, and he had said to the guy, he just came back to me later, we became very good friends, and I served on many boards with him. He said, exactly why do we have a guitar player on the board? And Neil Kasurik explained to him that yes, I was a very good guitar player, but I also understood how this thing works and what a valuable asset I would be to the board. I was so flattered, that the guy understood that, and so when you do well on one board, I guess they invite you to another.
So when you say yes once,
yeah.
they'll hope
As
you
I've
say
told,
yes again.
I told people, a fellow once said to me, he said, "Ray, you sit on more boards than a lazy carpenter."
To use that. In terms of the communities that are surrounding Austin, you talk about actually the growth that is happening both south of town, north of town. And as those communities develop, we hear them talking more about a focus on the arts. Why do you think that is? How do you really think that, the arts, whether, it is performing, visual, otherwise, how does that really play into the bigger picture of community?
Oh, well, it's everything from giving the cultural base, financial, and entertainment values, are inherent in the whole process. Well, I'm an example of it. I mean, I grew up outside in the suburbs of Philadelphia, PA, and I appeared with the Philadelphia Orchestra when I was 10 years old singing folk music. We had a folk music group, me and my sister. We sang This Land Is Your Land, and on top of Old Smoky with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And in the schools, I sang in the choirs and the choruses. Even though I was semi-professional, I didn't know it. My parents were not stage parents. Mm. My mom was a school teacher, my dad was a businessman, engineer. But they encouraged us, and there were community orchestras, there were community choirs. Then the school in the 7th grade, or I can't remember when it was, said, if you want to learn anything, you can get lessons from the band guy. And I wound up playing bass fiddle, and because they gave me a bass fiddle and I could play on the weekends, But I played in the orchestra, and they gave me lessons. And then in the 8th grade, they said, "You're tall, you can read bass clef. We need a tuba player for the marching band." And I played basketball in spring sports. I didn't play a fall sport, and so I got tuba lessons, and I studied with the tuba player from the Philadelphia Orchestra, Abe Torchinsky, and played in the district band, and played in the what they called the swing band, the stage band, and played in the marching band, the orchestra, the concert band, and those were the tools that I needed, because I had a great band leader to do what I do. This was, everybody in my family has a postgraduate degree, and I have a high school diploma. Mm-hmm. The point was that this was what I was going to do, and the grounding that I got through the community and through the schools enabled me to become a cowboy singer.
Well, great. When did you figure out that you might actually be able to make this a living?
Last month.
Right.
No, I never looked back. I went to college I was going to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I went to Antioch College, which had a work study program. You went to school for 3 months, then you did a co-op job for 3 months, anything you wanted. And I was very fortunate. I got a job in New York City as an apprentice editor for Eli Landau, a very famous producer, made The Pawnbroker, Academy Award-winning film, and made The Long Day's Journey in the Night, very classic. And figured out that I did not want to be a filmmaker, because I didn't want to live in New York, LA, or and sit in a dark room all day,
Right.
And so what was the question again?
When you knew you could make a living of this.
Oh yeah, and so I said, I just said, it's the same thing. I'm going to start a band, And this, my autobiography just came out, and you might want to read it, and otherwise we'll be here all day. That's a good pitch.
I was going to say, nice plug.
And so, and I just dove in head first and said, this is what I'm going to do,
Right.
And my mom always said, you're very, you're bullheaded and you do what you want to do, and that's the kind of person you got to be in order to do this. So we starved. I mean, it was great fun. But, we did starve, and then we went out to California, and that's where we made our record deal, But we went wherever we had to go, and that's the thing about how the problems of creating a creative community is you can't have a job. If you have a job, how are you going to do what you got to do? Now that's the perspective of a young 19-year-old kid, adult. But I tell that to kids because you have to be willing to, A, go where you need to go. So for instance, you get a phone call, and this friend of mine that I met when I was in college, Commander Cody and his band said, hey, come on out to California. Okay. And 5 of us get in broken down old cars and go to California, You have to believe, and you have to accept whatever comes. So that's why you got to be young to do it also, It's, because I always say you hit 31. So I I always considered myself successful because I was doing what I wanted to do. God, same thing, 1980, I don't remember what year it was. We were operating a business, and I owed the government $180,000 in payroll taxes. Not taxes, when you run a business, you give the guy his $300 and you take the taxes out, and they go right to the government. Well, if you don't have them, you don't send it to the you pay the guy who's playing guitar or drums or whatever. And it was like, and so we hit the wall, and wound up, paying it off. But it was such a loser. I mean, golly, we never made any money. I remember the other thing I figured out was I got to have a relationship with a bank. I figured that at an early age. If you have a relationship with a bank and they trust you and you pay your bills and you don't go to bankrupt and everything, you can continue on. My banker at the time, whatever it was called, Joe Holt, what was that bank? Whatever it was, we would continually refinance our bus, which we finally sold after it had 2.5 million miles on it to a poor Mexican band in South Austin. But he would go to, back then, it was in the 70s, so we didn't have the banking situation we have now. It was a lot of handshakes and trust. And the guy said, he would go to the loan committee and say, Texas Commerce Bank, and he would go, well, their balance sheet looks really bad, but they've never missed a payment. And so we were able to go boom, boom, boom. That's the kind of dedication you have to have. And I was fortunate enough to buy my first house out at Lake Travis for $18,500. And when late 80s, middle late 80s, I remortgaged my house to pay for the band. So you have to do that if you're dedicated. And sometimes you'll crash and burn. Honestly, it's a tough business. Now, as it relates to the arts and everything, the arts communities create commerce for your town. One of the things we did at the Texas Cultural Trust were these cultural districts. You know what I'm talking about? the arts districts. Essentially, the state, many years ago, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, we created these cultural arts districts and said that they had some tax incentives, but they had no money. And I was really surprised that this year we got $5 million approved from this stingy bunch of son of a. We asked for 10, they gave us 5. Thank you very much. Because we had gotten no money before, and this is basically the same thing, saying, okay, well, for instance, Pflugerville. Before the great boom, the main street of Pflugerville, would qualify for a cultural arts district if you then had one of the old movie house or an old whatever that you could refurbish and put in movies, music, whatever. Obviously, when something like that goes in, restaurants go in, bars go in, retail goes in, all of a sudden a blighted area becomes a cultural district and an economic engine for the town. San Elizario, east of El Paso, those who know the area, it has one of the old mission churches. A friend of mine moved there. She had, and became the mayor and started to revitalize the place. I said, you're a cultural arts district. You can apply for funds, and now Amado Pena has a gallery there. There's an old dinner theater that was there from the 60s that somebody will refurbish. The point is that there are economic incentives for having cultural arts districts. And again, the classical arts and the popular arts are something that have merged really in the last, I'd say, 25 years in America. I used to have a big argument with a certain dean of a certain university who is no longer there, thankfully, because the idea was, well, the arts are Beethoven, Bach, ballet, the 4 Bs, And I said, well, that's true, but the cultural arts of today, contemporary arts, whether and the popular arts are definitely art forms and have been recognized in most communities as that. And they also bring economic, vitality to an area.
That's great. I want to see if anybody else has questions, because I know I've been kind of, taking all of them. So, wait, we've got a microphone that's coming out to make sure nothing.
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Just wanted to get your input on the South by Southwest permit situation. I understand there's a birthday
You read
celebration.
The article.
Yeah. I didn't realize that there was even an event involving you, so I feel like this is good timing to kind of ask your opinion about how that was handled, and if it's kind of maybe an example of how Austin's changing and maybe leaving behind some of the cultural roots that had made it what it is today.
What he's talking about is that not every year, but for many years, I do my birthday party because it's the same week as South by Southwest, and I would do a party, and I invite friends of mine and raise money for different charities, musical charities. So I pick up the paper the other day. What we were going to do is we're going to do it at the GSD&M backlot behind GSD&M, have this beautiful area, and put a tent up. We've done it before. So Dave, who does all that, submits the thing, and it's 8 hours late or something. And they said, well, we're only having 125 permits. And so it was wonderful because the article was like, it made me feel like such an old man, though. They said, Austin icon Ray Benson's birthday party is, and he said, well, I guess if we have to cancel this birthday party, there'll be a few tears shed. This morning they approved the permit, so we'll be able to, we'll raise a lot of money for HAM, which is, we're trying to do we have a matching $250,000 donation that we'll start raising the matching money for.
I'm glad your birthday's still on. I have a question about the venues. You talked about how important it is to have places to play. You said one of the challenges now is really proximity because they're not as close as they used to be. We've seen, Austin Music Hall is now being slated to go away. Some other venues are closing. Do you feel like that's going to have an impact on our live music capital of the world?
The ones I'm talking about are the smaller places. The biggest problem is right now is sound ordinances, which are really convoluted. And believe me, I have great sympathy for people who live in an area and all of a sudden there's low end boom boom bass going on. So I think that's the thing. The larger halls, we're fine. We have so many of the larger venues now that the music hall, which was a disaster acoustically anyway, is not going to be missed because there's plenty of stuff. I mean, and there's new things coming up too, especially since we are able to do outdoor venues so much better than other cities. It's a lot easier. But it's the smaller venues that I worry about because, for instance, my little bar is over there on 7th, in between 6th and 7th on Nueces. And there's the Bremen block is right over there, and there's condos and everything. And this one woman was very unhappy. And we don't even, our music is inside, but on the top, all she was talking about was recorded music, being played on the deck on top. And there's an ordinance, it's 65 dB or 40, it's certain, there's a very clear ordinance. And first of all, it was the same thing with the W Hotel. They had single pane glass as opposed to double pane. They cheaped out that, and so that's part of the problem. The second part is we were here first, sorry here, or the condo owner can say the same thing, I was here first. But the point was that we went into the lady's apartment and did the sound reading. We were below the thing, and the bus went by, and it was 10 dBs louder than the music. So, I mean, I think the problem is partially because Austin was a quiet city for many years, and now it's a real city. So it's going loud. Cities are loud. Cities have buses, they got ambulances, they got noise, and so that's got to be dealt with, and then the costs got to be dealt with. But in terms of large venues, I think we're okay because we got the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then of course out here we have the racetrack, and those are the larger venues. But that's part of I think that's it. Yes, sir.
I've got 2 questions, right? First of all, what can kind of we as ordinary, everyday citizens do to more support the arts? Obviously, patronize the arts, go to shows, buy music. Is there anything else that you see that we could do to help maintain some of that status? And then secondly, just out of curiosity, we've got such a long line of kind of hometown kids that have made a name for themselves out there. Most recently, I think of like Gary Clark Jr., people like that. Who's next would be my next question.
Yeah, well, the first question, I think, the governments are really important in this. If there's one thing that government can do, it's help in that way. Both, and so that, that's one of the things that why I get so involved with the Texas Cultural Trust, et cetera, is that if we can influence government can do a whole lot more than any then on the other side of the coin is you have patrons of the arts. I mean that's always been from the Medicis to the present day. Wealthy people have to step up and usually do. I mean that's just reality. Do I like it that way? No, I don't. It's not a question of liking it or not liking it. It's what it is, and so let's deal with what exists. But I think that institutionally, it's the institutions that have the ability to do big things, whether they're educational institutions, government institutions, whatever. That's where the big stuff gets done. On a personal level, absolutely. You just, I did a campaign years ago, which was when Austin was a smaller town. It said hire local. Same thing now as buy local, but it was, look, you got a company, you do advertisement. Don't go to New York, LA. We have great talent here. I have recording studios. I got 2 recording studios. I said, these ad people. We've got big ad firms, Latinworks, GSD&M, McGarrick Jesse, et cetera. I said, you know, use local people. We've got incredible talent. If your company has a party, use local bands, you know, use local folks. As far as who's the next big thing, if I knew, I'd bet on it, you know. We have a management company and studio, so, you know, you don't know. What an old guy told me one time, an old record guy said, for mainstream music, you know, we're talking, you know, he says, a bunch of old men trying to figure out what kids are going to buy next, you know, because so much of that part of the business is youth-oriented. But, you know, this is, you know, my 46th year, and I'm 65 next month, and my demographic's still going out, and it's, we've transitioned it a lot to more performing arts centers and this, that, and the other, because folks who are over a certain age don't want to park 2 miles away and walk through the dust to the Austin City Limits Festival, you know. So it's about transitioning. New kids, shoot, I don't know, man, you know, you know, country music is a mess at this point. I mean, by that I mean, to get into the game, you have to have a certain demographic, you have a certain thing, and then it's millions of dollars of radio, press, this, that, and the other. And so that's, you know, that's why I did my TV show. My TV show's in 90 cities now through cable in Texas thing. And we're mostly what they call Texas Red Dirt music. This is, you know, Randy Rogers, Cody Johnson, Turnpike Troubadours, Aaron Watson. Have you heard of any of these people? You might have, but a lot of people have. I mean, outside of state, nothing. These guys are making $2, $3, $4 million a year, and they go up to Nashville, and in Nashville they have what now is called a 360 deal, 360-degree deal. That means they get your record, they get a piece of your touring, a piece of your T-shirts, your website, your management, et cetera, because they're not selling the numbers that they used to sell. And if they're going to invest the $3 million, they better get it out of everywhere, you know, because they're investing in you and they're promoting you. So it's just so different that you, and so they make you record a very small thing. Same with pop music. I mean, you know, it's kind of sad. But on the other side of the coin, there's hundreds of wonderful acts doing wonderful music that is not getting into the mainstream, but is doing fine. And we have, the Texas Red Dirt thing is pretty amazing because of its, how strong it is, but it is also very limited. The Turnpike Troubadours are from Oklahoma. They're making $4 or $5 million a year, but their album sales are at about, you know, 50,000, 60,000, whereas a Nashville act with mainstream will be, you know, between 500 and 1 million. But they're not spending anything comparatively to what those other people are. And at 50,000 units, they're making, you know, $7, $8 average a unit, as opposed to if you're in Nashville and you sell 1 million, you get nothing because they spent so much in trying to recoup you. So one of those acts are going to, you know, come out of the pack, just like in the 70s Willie Nelson did, in the 80s George Strait did. They were both regional acts that broke out. So somebody will, and I think it'll be from that bunch. Randy Rogers, he's doing pretty good in that respect. In the pop world, there's a bunch, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen a bunch of them, though. I can't remember all their names, but, you know, from the pop world, for instance, Spoon has done well. I don't know if they even live here anymore, though. I don't know. You know, it's gotten kind of, you know, Gary's done really well, obviously, but again, his last album wasn't big. but he's doing well live, and that's what I always did. We just played live. All right. So write, and that's the thing. These write about it, talk about it. Journalism is our #1 friend, because that's where people are discovered, and that's where people utilize the press that they get in order to get shows and to convince club owners, promoters, etc., that people know who they are and want to come see them. And so local press is so important, and because of the consolidation of everything. I mean, I do a show on Sirius XM radio too, and you realize, oh yeah, I'm reaching all the thing, but local is still so important, and it's regional is so important and is so ignored. That's why, like I say, my TV show, I don't make any money on it. We need a new sponsor. We lost Chevy. We had Chevy for 5 years and lost them because, again, so much of the ad dollars are going to telephones and cell phones and that because we're on terrestrial television, it's the ad dollars are moving elsewhere. So it's all about transitioning,
Well, great. Any other questions?
Last chance, folks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Guys.
This has been
Appreciate
great.
it. Thank you.